Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're going to crack open a case study.
Okay.
It's called A Dark Horse in the Global Smartphone Market, Huawei's Smartphone Strategy.
Sounds interesting.
It's by Yanggao Xiao and Guoji Chen.
Mm-hmm.
And it really made me think about how Huawei went from, just telecom equipment to, seriously challenging Apple and Samsung in the smartphone game.
Yeah, it's a wild story.
It is.
And to really grasp it, you got to start with the landscape they were walking into.
Okay.
Remember way back when cell phones were these clunky things?
Oh, yeah?
Just calls and texts?
Barely.
The idea of a pocket computer that was just starting to, kind of bubble up.
Right.
And then
Bro.
the iPhone in 2007
And Android in 2008.
totally changed the game.
Touchscreens, apps, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
Suddenly your phone was like a portal to this whole other world.
Exactly. And that shift, that's the key to understanding what Huawei was trying to do. They didn't just want to make another phone.
Right.
They wanted to be a part of this whole new, digital ecosystem thing.
Be a player.
Yeah, be a player.
Yeah.
But to do that, man, they had to get past some serious roadblocks.
Okay, so let's break that down a little. What were the big, obstacles for a newcomer trying to, bust into the smartphone scene?
Well, for starters, control of the operating system. Android and iOS, they were already running the show.
Right.
Building a whole new platform from scratch. That's a tall order.
Huge.
And then there's brand loyalty. People were already hooked on their iPhones, their Samsung Galaxies.
Yeah.
It's like trying to crash a party where everyone already knows each other.
Totally. Plus, don't forget the app ecosystem.
Well, right.
Developers, they go where the users are.
Mm-hmm.
So a new company, they'd have to convince those developers, hey, build apps for our platform.
Exactly. And all of this while going up against Apple, Samsung, these giants pouring tons of money into, being better, looking cooler.
It's intimidating. So
Yeah.
any new company,
Yeah.
they had to come in with something truly different.
Yeah, a real unique angle.
And that's where Huawei's background, in telecom, that actually helped them out, right?
Absolutely. They had this, deep knowledge of networks and how to make them sing.
Yep.
Which was huge for smartphones that were doing more and more data-heavy stuff.
Makes sense.
Plus, they had a history of, pouring money into R&D.
Really?
Yeah,
Investing in the future.
big time. So they could develop their own chipsets, like the Kirin series.
But they weren't just slapping together parts from other companies.
Nope. They were controlling key parts of the tech themselves.
Interesting. But didn't they start by focusing on a very particular part of the market?
You're right. Instead of trying to go head-to-head with the big dogs right away,
Yeah.
Huawei went for low-cost phones.
Yeah.
They wanted to grab market share, especially in places where people were really price-sensitive.
Smart. It's like building a base camp before you climb Everest.
Yeah. Get a foothold, make your name known, then aim higher.
Exactly. So let's dig into this cloud pipe device strategy they're known for. It sounds kind of like plumbing related. What does it actually mean?
Well, it's basically saying they weren't just thinking about the phone itself.
Right.
They wanted to make a whole system where the phone worked seamlessly with, cloud computing and the telecom network.
So it's about the whole experience.
Yeah, the whole shebang.
Were they, trying to create their own mini Apple ecosystem?
In a way, yeah. They saw that the future of smartphones wasn't just about, specs or whatever. It was about this connected world, where devices and software and services all played nice together.
Okay.
And that's where their telecom background really came in handy. They
Yeah.
could use their existing stuff, their partnerships, to offer things like super smooth network performance and cloud-based goodies.
Pretty clever way to stand out.
Yeah.
So they started with those lower priced phones.
Yeah.
But they eventually set their sights on the premium market, right? What marked that shift?
I'd say the Ascend P6 in 2013, that was a big moment.
What was special about it?
It was a sleek, stylish phone.
Okay.
It really challenged the look of the big brands.
Interesting.
Then came the Mate 7 in 2014, known for its big screen, amazing battery life.
So they were going beyond just affordability.
Totally.
Design and performance were becoming their focus.
Yeah, they wanted the whole package.
Did they make any, specific moves to boost their tech to really stand out?
Well, partnering with Leica for camera tech, that was huge.
Oh, yeah. That's why Huawei phones take such good pictures. They teamed up with, A photography legend.
Exactly. And they kept pouring money into those Kirin chips,
Okay.
pushing the limits of what mobile processors could do.
So they had more control over like how fast the phones were, how much power they used.
Yeah, the core stuff.
It sounds like they were really trying to like control their own destiny, not rely on other companies for the essential tech.
Exactly. They wanted to be masters of their own fate.
But even with all of this, there were still like challenges ahead, right?
Oh, of course.
I mean, the tech world, it's always changing.
It's a wild ride. They still had to deal with, not having total control over their operating system.
Right.
And building a killer app ecosystem. That's a constant battle.
Yeah, it's a tough gig.
Plus, there's the whole geopolitical scene, which can throw some serious curveballs.
Right. The tech world is never calm and predictable. So by 2015, Huawei was a major player.
Definitely.
But where did they actually stand compared to, like, the giants, Apple, and Samsung? That's what we'll be diving into next.
Exactly. Let's look at the data, see how Huawei stacked up against the competition. Numbers, trends, the juicy insights.
Stay tuned, folks. This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because the numbers, they tell a story.
Oh, they do. Exhibit 1 from the case study, it tracks the top 10 global smartphone brands.
Okay. By shipment market share from 2014 to 2016. And some interesting trends pop up.
Lay it on me. What story are these numbers telling?
Well, in 2014, Samsung was the king, followed by Apple.
Okay.
Huawei was in a respectable third place globally.
Globally.
Yeah. Holding 6.3% of the market share.
Not bad?
Not bad at all. But things were about to change because Huawei was on the move.
I bet.
Fast forward to 2015, and there are some shifts.
Okay.
Samsung was still on top,
Yeah.
but Apple's share jumped to 24.5%.
Wow.
Huawei's grew to 9.4%.
So the competition was heating up.
You're definitely getting hotter.
They were gaining, but still behind Apple.
What about 2016? Did they close the gap?
They made some serious gains.
Okay.
Hit 16.8% market share.
Getting closer.
Still not at the top, but their growth, it was steeper than Apple's, steeper than Samsung's.
Okay, so they were climbing fast.
Yeah.
But what about the operating system landscape? They were using Android, right?
Yeah.
How did that fit into their strategy?
Exhibit 2, it breaks down the global smartphone operating system market share. Android was the big dog, consistently.
Like how big?
Ranging from like 79% to 87% between 2013 and 2016. iOS was steady in second place,
Okay.
around 11% to 17%.
So Android was the dominant force, but that didn't give Huawei much control over, like, the software experience, did it?
Nope, not really.
It's like they were building a house on someone else's land.
It was a double-edged sword.
Okay.
Android gave them access to tons of apps and a familiar interface for users.
Right.
But they were at the mercy of Google's updates and, rules.
So they had to find a way to make their phones different, even within Android's, like, limitations.
Yeah.
Did they manage that?
They did.
Yeah.
They used the fact that Android's open source
Right.
to make their own customized user interface called EMUI. This gave their phones a unique look and feel.
So they were adding their own flavor to the Android recipe.
Exactly. It gave something different to people who wanted more than just the basic Android experience.
Smart. So they were making progress on software. What about hardware?
Yeah.
Specifically those Kirin chips they were developing. How did those do in the market?
Let's check out Exhibit 3. It breaks down the Android side market share in 2016. Qualcomm, with their Snapdragon chips, they were the kings.
Okay.
50.6%.
Wow.
MediaTek was second at 29.3%.
Okay, so where did Huawei's chips fit in?
Huawei's Kirin chips, they grabbed a decent 7.7% of the market,
Not bad.
putting them ahead of Intel, even ahead of Samsung in that specific segment.
Wow, that's impressive. They're going up against Qualcomm, and they still carved out a space for themselves.
Their bet on doing it all themselves, it was paying off.
Vertical integration.
Yeah, that's the term.
Controlling more parts of the process.
Exactly. It let them really fine-tune their hardware and software,
Right.
squeeze out better performance, make their phones stand out in a crowded market.
Now, we talked about, those potential threats to the smartphone market.
Yeah.
Laptops, tablets, things like that. Did those actually pose a serious challenge to smartphones during this time?
Exhibit 4 has some interesting stuff on that. It projects shipments for desktops, laptops, tablets from 2010 to 2019.
Okay.
What's striking is desktop PC shipments, they were going down,
Mm-hmm.
but laptop shipments, they stayed pretty stable.
Interesting.
And tablet shipments, they actually went up for a while before leveling off.
So smartphones weren't just, taking over the world.
Not quite. People were into mobile computing, but they still liked different screen sizes, different tools for different jobs.
Makes sense. Laptops for work, tablets for chilling, smartphones for, like, everything else.
Right. The market was changing, but smartphones were holding their own.
Mm.
But what about the overall growth of the smartphone market itself? Was it just like up, up, up?
Yeah, good question.
Exhibit 5 charts global smartphone shipments from 2009 to 2015. At first, it's crazy growth.
Okay.
Shipments going from 173.5 million units in 2009 to a whopping 1,301.7 million in 2014.
That's huge, but it couldn't last forever, right?
Mhm.
You got it.
Every market kind of hits a ceiling.
From 2014 to 2015, things slowed down.
Okay.
The market added only 143.9 million units.
So the crazy growth was starting to ease up.
Yeah, at least in some places.
So the party couldn't last forever. But where was the growth still happening?
Exhibit 6 breaks down shipments by region. North America, Western Europe, those places, not much growth.
Mature markets.
Right. But China, that was a different story.
Ah, interesting.
Huge jump in 2014, then more moderate growth.
So as smartphones became like everyday things in developed markets, emerging markets, especially China, they became the new battleground.
Yep.
And that must have been big for Huawei's strategy.
Oh, absolutely. Understanding those regional differences like pricing, features, how you sell the phones, that was key to winning.
Okay, so we've seen the big picture, but I'm curious about Huawei's specific performance.
Yeah.
We have all this quarterly data on shipments for different brands, right? What can that tell us? Exhibits 7A and 7B give us a really close look at shipments and market share, Meiju brands, fourth quarter 2009 to first quarter 2016. It's a gold mine.
Okay, I'm ready to mine. What jumps out at you?
The fall of Nokia, that's striking. Remember, they were the giants back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
Fourth quarter 2009, they shipped over 20 million units, 38.6% market share.
They're dominating.
But by 2015, they're practically gone. Their decline was fast, ended with Microsoft buying them.
It's a reminder that even the biggest names can fall if they don't keep up.
For sure. Meanwhile, Apple, they were consistent, steady growth in shipments and market share. They knew how to keep that premium appeal, that loyal fan base.
Yeah. What about Samsung? Did they hold their own against Apple?
Samsung had a bumpier ride.
Okay.
Ups and downs in shipments, but generally they stayed strong, often selling more units than Apple. They offered a wide range of models, different prices, different features. That helped them grab a big chunk of the market.
So Samsung was playing the volume game, while Apple focused on the high end. What about Huawei? How did their numbers look over these quarters?
Their trajectory is impressive. Early on, their shipments were low, but by the first quarter of 2016, they jumped to 32.7 million units, 16.7% market share.
Steady growth, quarter after quarter. Their strategy was working.
Yeah, it was. But remember, this data is all about shipments.
Okay.
To really see the impact of their smartphone success, we got to look at the money.
Right. Shipments are one thing, but revenue is where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
Does their smartphone success translate into, like, cold, hard cash?
Exhibit 8A breaks down Huawei's revenue and operating profit from 2006 to 2015, and it's remarkable.
Okay, what does it say?
Revenue going up consistently, starting at 66.365 billion CNY in 2006.
Okay.
Hitting an incredible 395.0009 billion CNY in 2015.
Wow. That's not just growth, that's an explosion. What about profitability? Were they just getting bigger, or were they also getting more efficient?
Operating profit, that climbed steadily too. Reached 45.788 billion CNY in 2015.
So they weren't just growing, they were becoming more profitable.
Yeah, they were getting good at making money.
So their smartphone success was really fueling the whole company's growth.
Definitely a driving force.
But they were also putting money back into R&D, right? How much were they investing in innovation during this time?
Exhibit 9 shows that clearly. R&D expenditure as a percentage of sales stayed high.
Like how high?
Around 9% to 15% between 2009 and 2015.
That's huge. Most companies would be happy with a fraction of that.
It shows they were committed to staying ahead of the game. They knew that in tech, if you're not innovating, you're falling behind.
They were playing the long game, and they were playing it well. So we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive. We've looked at the changing smartphone landscape, we've dug into Huawei's strategic moves, and we've analyzed their impressive growth. But remember, this case study focuses on the period up to 2015.
Right. A lot's happened since then.
And we're not stopping here. To really get where Huawei stands today and what the future holds, We need to look at the things that have shaped the smartphone world in recent years. The rise of 5G, the geopolitical stuff, those ever-changing consumer demands. It's a whole new ballgame.
Absolutely. Buckle up, because in the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore what happened after 2015, the next chapter in Huawei's incredible journey. We'll uncover the challenges they faced, the triumphs they achieved, and the decisions that have shaped their destiny.
Stay tuned. This deep dive is about to get even deeper.
Welcome back. When we left off, Huawei was on the up and up, but the tech world, it's rarely a smooth ride.
It's true.
So let's jump ahead past 2015 and see what happened.
You know, it's funny how Huawei's story is almost like a mini version of the whole tech industry. It's got innovation, fierce competition, and all those unexpected twists and turns. It's a wild ride.
Totally. And one of the biggest twists lately has been, well, 5G, this next generation of wireless tech. It was supposed to revolutionize everything.
Yeah, 5G, everyone was talking about it.
Blazing fast speeds, a whole new world of possibilities for smartphones, you name it.
Okay, so 5G was the next big thing. Did Huawei manage to ride that wave, or did they wipe out?
They were actually one of the first to jump on the 5G train.
Really?
Remember, they had that deep knowledge of telecom infrastructure.
Right, they were already in that world.
So they were in a great spot to use that knowledge and put 5G into their devices.
So their background actually gave them a head start in the 5G race. That's pretty impressive.
It was a big advantage. They were able to launch 5G-capable smartphones early on, and their devices, they were designed to perform really well on these new networks.
So they were ahead of the curve.
Yeah, they were moving fast. But there was another big development that would really impact their journey.
Uh-oh, this doesn't sound good. What happened?
In 2019, the U.S. government, they hit Huawei with trade restrictions, national security concerns, they said.
Oh, wow.
This was a big deal. It really messed with their access to key components and technologies.
Like what?
Including Google's Android operating system.
Whoa, that's a huge blow. They were riding high on the 5G wave, and then bam, these restrictions. What did that mean for their smartphone business?
It forced them to make a big change, a drastic move.
What'd they do?
They couldn't use Google's apps and services anymore on their new smartphones.
Right.
So they had to speed up the development of their own operating system, Harmony OS.
Wow, so they had to go from relying on Android to building their own platform from scratch.
Yeah.
That's a massive undertaking. How did they manage that?
It's been a mixed bag, to be honest. They've made some good progress developing Harmony OS, creating their own app ecosystem, but it's tough. They're basically trying to compete with the giants, Android and iOS.
Right, those are the big dogs.
They've got a huge head start in terms of users, developers, all the apps that are available. It's a lot to catch up on.
It's like trying to build a new city while everyone else is already living in these huge established metropolises.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It takes time to build trust, to get developers on board, to make a user experience that's as good as what people are used to.
So have people, like regular consumers, have they been willing to switch from Android to Harmony OS?
It's been slow going. People get comfortable with what they know. It's hard to get them to try something new, even if it's got cool features.
It's about trust and familiarity.
Exactly.
So those U.S. restrictions really threw a wrench into their plans?
Yeah.
But Huawei, they're a tough company. They've faced challenges before. Did they have any other, tricks up their sleeve to deal with this?
Well, remember, smartphones weren't their only business. They had that strong foundation in telecom equipment.
Right. They were a major player in building the stuff that makes the internet and mobile networks work.
Exactly. And that turned out to be really important during this whole thing.
So that helped them survive the storm.
Absolutely. Even with the problems in the smartphone market, their telecom infrastructure business kept doing well.
Okay.
They were a big part of rolling out 5G networks all over the world.
Globally?
Yep. Winning contracts with major carriers in Europe, Asia, Africa. They were diversified.
So they had this, backup revenue stream.
Yeah.
That gave them some stability while they dealt with the smartphone mess. It's like having a spare tire when you get a flat.
Exactly. That smart planning allowed them to keep investing in R&D, exploring new stuff, even when things were tough in one part of their business.
That's impressive.
It shows how adaptable and resilient they are. A lot of companies would struggle with that.
So let's fast forward to today, 2024. Where does Huawei stand in the global smartphone market after all this craziness?
Well, They're not the global leader, but they're still a major player, especially in places like China.
Okay.
They've got a strong following there, lots of loyal customers.
So they've carved out a space for themselves, even with all those challenges and the competition from Apple and Samsung.
They've been through a lot, and they're still standing.
But what about their long-term goals? Do they still want to be number one?
It's hard to say for sure. The smartphone world is constantly changing. It's risky to predict what will happen. But one thing's for certain. Huawei is not a company that gives up easily. They've shown they can innovate, adapt, and overcome obstacles.
They're fighters.
Yeah, for sure. And they're still investing heavily in R&D. That tells me they're not content with just staying where they are. They want to do more. They want to be a leader.
It's like they have this drive to keep pushing, to find the next big thing that will give them an edge.
They're hungry for innovation.
Yeah.
They're not afraid to experiment, to take risks, to do things differently.
That's what makes their story so interesting.
Absolutely. It's a story of ambition, vision, and a real dedication to pushing the limits of what's possible with technology.
Well said. So we've seen how the smartphone market has evolved, we've witnessed Huawei's incredible rise, and we've explored all the challenges they've faced. But there's one more piece to look at, the financial side of their journey.
You're right. We've talked about revenue and R&D, but let's really dig into the numbers. Let's see how all those decisions have played out financially.
All right, time to crunch some numbers. I want to see the bottom line. What do the financials tell us about Huawei's success?
Let's bring back Exhibit 8A. It shows their revenue and operating profit from 2006 to 2015. Their revenue went through the roof during that time, hitting 395.009 billion CNY in 2015. But there's another chart, Exhibit 8B, that breaks down their revenue by different parts of their business.
Okay, so this will show us how much each part of their business contributed to that overall revenue figure. Let's see what it says.
In 2015, their carrier network business, which is basically their telecom infrastructure stuff, that was the biggest chunk of their revenue.
Okay.
232.455 billion CNY. That shows just how strong they are in that field.
So even with smartphones taking off, their core business was still the main moneymaker. It's like having a strong foundation to build on.
Yeah, exactly. And then their enterprise business, which provides IT solutions to businesses and organizations, that brought in 43.757 billion CNY. They were diversifying, finding new ways to make money.
So they weren't just a one-hit wonder. They were building a real tech empire.
Mm-hmm.
What about the consumer business, their smartphones? How much did that contribute in 2015?
The consumer business, that brought in a solid 118.807 billion CNY in 2015. That shows just how much their smartphone sales were growing. They were capturing a big chunk of the consumer market.
So while their core business was still the biggest, smartphones were catching up fast. They were doing a good job of balancing their older business with their newer ventures.
Exactly. They were using their strengths in different areas to create a business that was diversified and resilient. But we can't forget that success in tech, it's often driven by innovation. They had to invest in R&D to keep moving forward.
Right, investing in the future.
Exhibit 9 gives us a clear look at their R&D spending. Their R&D expenditure as a percentage of sales, it stayed high.
We saw that before, yeah?
Around 9% to 15% between 2009 and 2015.
That's a huge commitment to staying ahead of the curve.
It shows they were serious about staying on top. They weren't satisfied with just doing well. They wanted to be the best. They were investing in the future, even while they were reaping the rewards of their past successes.
That's smart. So they were putting a lot of money into R&D, but did it actually lead to results? Did those research dollars turn into, innovative products that gave them a competitive edge?
That's the key question, right? Because innovation is great, but it only matters if it leads to real-world success. So did Huawei manage to turn their research into gold? Let's look at some specific examples of their R&D achievements and see how those have shaped their products.
Okay, let's see it. What did they come up with?
One area where they made big strides was chip design. Remember those Kirin processors?
Yeah, the ones they developed themselves.
Those chips have consistently pushed the limits of what mobile processors can do. For example, they were one of the first to put dedicated neural processing units, or NPUs, into their chips.
NPUs. Those sound pretty fancy. What do they actually do?
NPUs are special processors designed for artificial intelligence tasks.
Okay.
They can handle the complex calculations involved in machine learning, image recognition, natural language processing, things that make smartphones smarter and more responsive.
So they're basically giving smartphones a brain boost.
Exactly. It's like giving your phone a superpower.
Pretty cool. What other innovations came out of their R&D labs?
They've also made big progress in battery technology. They developed their own fast charging tech called Supercharge.
I've heard of that.
It lets their phones charge super quickly, often getting to a full charge in less than an hour.
That's a dream come true for anyone who's always on the go.
It's a big deal for people who rely on their phones a lot.
Did those innovations actually make a difference in how their phones sold?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Focusing on chip design and battery tech allowed them to offer smartphones with great performance, long battery life, and fast charging. Consumers loved those features, especially in the premium market.
So they were turning R&D into real benefits for consumers. That's a recipe for success. But innovation isn't just about hardware and software. It's also about design, user experience, knowing what people want. Did Huawei do anything interesting in those areas?
Oh, they definitely tried to up their design game to create a premium image for their brand. They worked with famous designers, they used high-quality materials, they even explored innovative features like foldable displays.
Foldable phones, that's the future.
They were trying to create a sense of style, of sophistication around their brand.
And did it work?
People praised their designs and the quality of their phones. They started to see Huawei as a brand that combined cutting-edge tech with, a touch of class.
So they were hitting all the right notes. Innovation, performance, design, and understanding what consumers wanted. No wonder they were able to challenge the big guys.
It shows what you can do with ambition, a clear vision, and a commitment to being the best. They proved that even in a tough industry like tech, a company with the right ingredients can rise to the top and shake things up.
Well said. But as we've seen, the tech world is always evolving. What worked yesterday might not work tomorrow. So where does Huawei go from here? What's next for this company?
That's the question we'll be tackling in the final part of our deep dive. We'll look at the challenges and opportunities that Huawei faces in this ever-changing world. We'll see what they need to do to stay ahead and remain a force to be reckoned with in the tech industry.
Stay tuned, folks. The best is yet to come. All right, we're back. Ready to wrap up our deep dive into Huawei's smartphone strategy.
It's been quite a ride, hasn't it?
It has.
From those early days, focusing on those budget phones to becoming this global powerhouse, challenging the big names.
Yeah, they've faced setbacks, they've had big wins, navigated a constantly changing landscape.
And they've shown this remarkable ability to adapt, to innovate.
They're survivors.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the future. Where does Huawei go from here? What are the big challenges and opportunities they'll need to tackle to stay on top?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles they still face is, the shadow of those U.S. trade restrictions.
All right, those are still in place.
They've made progress with HarmonyOS in their own app world, but it's still a tough fight against Android and iOS.
It's like trying to get people to switch teams when everyone's already loyal to their side.
Exactly. Getting developers on board, building an app ecosystem that's as good as what's already out there, that takes time.
That's a long game.
It is. They need to convince consumers and developers that HarmonyOS is worth the switch, that it offers something special.
So it's about patience, building trust, and showing people why HarmonyOS is the way to go. But what about those areas where Huawei has always been strong?
Yeah.
Like telecom infrastructure, R&D. Can they use those to create new openings?
For sure. The global rollout of 5G, the demand for better networks, that's a big opportunity for Huawei. They're already leading in 5G infrastructure.
Right.
They can use that to win contracts, expand into new markets.
So they can play to their strengths, position themselves as like the essential provider for the next generation of connectivity.
Exactly.
Smart. But the tech world never sits still. What about those emerging trends that are changing everything? Are they keeping up?
They're all over it. Artificial intelligence, augmented reality, the Internet of Things. They've got research labs, partnerships, all focused on these new technologies, and they're integrating those advancements into their products and services.
So they're not just watching from the sidelines, they're actively shaping the future.
They're not afraid to push the limits.
But with all these opportunities, there must be challenges too, right?
Of course. The tech world is a race. Staying ahead takes constant innovation. They've got to navigate this tricky geopolitical landscape, deal with concerns about data privacy, and always be ready for whatever consumers want next.
It's like trying to hit a moving target. But throughout this whole deep dive, what's really struck me is Huawei's resilience, their ability to bounce back.
They've faced some tough times, but they've always found a way to adapt, to come up with something new, to come out stronger.
So what's the big takeaway here? What's the main thing we want listeners to remember about Huawei's story?
I think it's the importance of having big goals, a clear vision, and never giving up on pushing boundaries.
They didn't follow the crowd. They made their own path,
Yeah.
challenged the status quo, and really made a mark on the tech world.
They understood their strengths, they saw the opportunities, and they weren't afraid to take risks.
It's a story that shows us that even when things are tough, innovation and determination can lead to success.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe someday we'll be doing a deep dive into the rise of some new tech giant, one that learned from Huawei, one that navigated this ever-changing world with even more skill and innovation.
That's a great thought. Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the world of tech.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. See you on the next one.